Awesome. Go ahead and have a seat. Hey, God's already at work and he wants to do some more things. You ready for that? Awesome. Hey, we're in this series called Beyond Blessed, and we're uncovering these different passages in the book of Ephesians. And what we're doing is we're reminding ourselves about these realities that we have, these blessings that we have as followers of Jesus Christ. And so it's been fun to discover these, but here's what I'm finding is that in a culture, maybe you know this, in a culture that continues to remind us of all the things we don't have, the Bible shouts into our lives about all the things we do have in Jesus. And so we're uncovering those one at a time. And so today we're talking about what I believe is the most underutilized blessing of all in the life of Christ followers. And do you know that you can be beyond blessed and missing out all at the same time? And that's what we're talking about. And so I would even go as far to say that other than the decision to follow Jesus, this is the second most important blessing that is available to you as followers of Christ. Is that something you would want to know about? I hope it would be. But here's the deal. And here's really the big question. After this message, are you going to do anything about it? Because chances are you've heard messages like this before, and maybe it hasn't changed anything about where you go from here. But maybe even by faith, right here in this moment, you would say, God, whatever this blessing is, I want to step into it. Whatever this blessing is, I want a part of that. And just by faith, you can commit that right there in your seat. So here's something that I've experienced. Maybe you have too. Have you ever had people make assumptions about you that were just way off? Has this happened to you too? It might sound like this. Because you're like that, you must be like this. For example, my hair has gotten a lot darker over the years, but growing up, my hair was like Ronald McDonald red. It was just like, wow. And I can remember all these things coming my way. I just picked up on it over the years that people have so many stereotypes about redheads, and maybe even redheads in the room. You're like, I get this. I know this. This is what I've heard too. Because it would most of the time happen when I would be in front of my parents' friends or introduced to them or whatever. They'd be like, hey, this is Jeff, this is my son. And they would be like, look at that red hair. You must have a bad, go ahead, temper. Yes, thanks for pouring salt into that wound. That is awesome. I trust that we have a group for that. Okay, Ginger's Anonymous. I don't know. Wow, there was just all these assumptions that would come my way. And I'd be like, I don't belong in that category at all. Or sometimes redheads are assumed to be bullies. And I think this came from, the movie A Christmas Story, right? Red Ryder, BB gun, Ralphie, the whole thing. The bully in there is like this tall, redheaded kid with freckles, and I think he gave Gingers a bad name forever. I don't know. And people would just be like, oh, you must be a bully. I'm like, don't speak that over me. I don't belong to your stereotype. And over the years, I've had to dodge different jokes and stereotypes about being a pastor, about growing up in the suburbs, about being the baby of the family. Being a Cubs fan comes with all kinds of jokes that people love to dish out. Being an introvert, being Irish, all these things come with jokes. And I don't belong to certain stereotypes. And maybe you've experienced that too. And so we know where we don't belong, but here's the big question this morning. Where do you belong? Where do you belong? Because today we're talking about the reality that you are blessed with belonging. Here's the definition, is that belonging is acceptance as a natural member or a part of a group. Some might call it community or having a spiritual family. It's this idea that when you follow Jesus, you become a child of God. And the children of God create a family that you get to be a part of. And so while we have family in God's family, let's also be honest about something else. We not only have family, but we also have fences. What are fences? Well, fences in my life help define where my yard starts and ends and where your yard starts and ends. Fences also keep my dog and my kids' toys out of your yard. You're welcome. That's really good. Most of the time it keeps them out. But when we're talking about relationships, what we're really talking about are these emotional and relational walls that people build up to keep people away. And we all have these to some degree. And so they could be a conclusion that we've made about people in general. We might be able to say, no one can be trusted because someone burned us. No one can be trusted. That is a fence that you've built up in your life. Or maybe you would say, it's more personal. You might say, I'm unlovable. No one would understand. And that's a fence that you've built up in your life. And so wound after wound, belief after belief, this fence becomes bigger and stronger than maybe you ever wanted it to be. And I think Christ followers get to a point where they're like, you know what? I've been hurt so much. Can I just follow Jesus from here? Can I just follow Jesus from here? Maybe even during greeting time, I promise I'll stick my hand out, I will fist bump, I will high five, I will do whatever he asks me to do in a church service, but for the rest of the week, I'm gonna live life back here. Pastor, can I do that? And the answer is no. The answer is no. I mean, just look at Jesus' life. He was constantly surrounded by people, and we believe that Jesus is on the move here at Lakeland. Do you believe that too? Jesus is on the move here at Lakeland, and so you can't follow him behind a fence. You can't follow him behind a fence. And so here's something that I'm wrestling with, that following Jesus alone isn't following Jesus at all. Following Jesus alone isn't following Jesus at all. Minus just a few times in the Gospels where Jesus is all by himself, he lived life in community. And so every time that someone said, I want to follow you, it was always through Jesus and into community. Every time. Every time. There wasn't a single instance where someone said, hey, Jesus, hey, Jesus, come on over here. When you invited me to follow you, here's what I was thinking. I was thinking that maybe just you and me could hang out. We could just hang out back here, chips and salsa. I'll just lay it all out. We'll have a party. It'll be great. And it'll just be me and you. Can we do that? What would have Jesus' answer have been? No. No. Because it was always through Jesus and into community. Because following Jesus alone isn't following Jesus at all. And so wherever you are or aren't with experiencing the full power of belonging, and taking your step into the family of God, I want you to hear this. There's a place for you at Lakeland. There's a place for you to thrive and to be a part of the family and to experience belonging like you never have before. And here at Lakeland, we talk about being changed by Jesus. And can I just be real with you? That this is one area of my life that with God's help, I have experienced so much change. I am by nature on my own, very private. Very introverted, non-relational, analytic. Like I have everything against me when it comes to belonging, right? That's just me. But over the years, God has ripped that away from me to love belonging, to find belonging, to extend it to others. It's been such a huge change in my life. And so I want to bring you some truths that I have found over the years. I have not arrived by any sense. But I want to invite you on the journey. And so Ephesians chapter 2, that's where we are. If you want to turn there or pull that up, I want to share just two truths with you. Here we go. Truth number one, you are blessed to belong. You are blessed to belong. This is what we've been talking about this whole series. What are these realities that are true that I can now step into as a child of God? For anyone who's found belonging in all the wrong places. For anyone who has taken steps toward belonging and you got burned. For everyone who feels like they don't belong anywhere, I've got great news for you. There's a reality, a blessing that's available to you in Jesus, and it comes through his people, and it's called belonging. Ephesians chapter 2, starting in verse 11. It says, therefore, so we kind of got to look what happened right before this. Last week, Josh talked about that we are alive in Jesus, that we need to start playing for the winning team, that there are things in us that need to die, there are things in us that need to come out of the grave. Do you remember that? Okay, so therefore, because of all of that, remember that formerly you who were Gentiles by birth and were called uncircumcision by those who were called the circumcision, I'll talk about that in just a moment, which is done in the body by human hands. Remember that at that time you were separated from Christ, excluded from the citizenship in Israel, and foreigners to the covenant of the promise. You are without hope and you're without God in the world. But now, here's the reality. Here's the blessing. But now, in Christ Jesus, you who were once far away have been brought near by the blood of Christ. So what's happening here? In the Bible, there were divisions, there were barriers, there were fences that kept people apart. This is nothing new. And what Paul does here is he speaks out against the largest division, the largest fence between two people. And those two groups were the Jews and the Gentiles. The Jews were God's chosen people, and they were chosen to bring about the Messiah and to let everyone know about it, the entire world know about it. And so they were positioned for impact, but they used their position to look down on others. To the Jews, the Gentiles were scum. They were worthless. They were to be treated like street dogs. For example, if your Jewish son or daughter married a Gentile, if your Jewish son or daughter married a Gentile, instead of paying for a wedding, you would invest in a funeral. And you would invest in a funeral to send a message to your son or daughter that you are dead to us. I can't believe you did this to the family. We are disowning you altogether. It was that powerful, this division, this fence. Another example would be if you ever left the cleanliness of Jerusalem and had to walk through Gentile territory, you would have to come back and scrub your feet and scrub your sandals to get any of that contamination off, because you didn't want to contaminate anyone or anything in Jerusalem. And so this was a big deal, and it was a big fence. But the greatest ancient insult of all came around circumcision, and that's what this passage talks about. And circumcision is mentioned a lot in the Bible. Can I just say it's mentioned an awkward amount of times that it forces people like me to talk about it and explain it to you. But here's the big deal. It's more than what we think it is today. So why was circumcision a big deal in the Bible? Well, in Genesis 17, God makes a promise to Abraham, also to Israel, that he is going to bless the world through people who come from Abraham. And he needed to give them an outward sign that they were his people. And that outward sign was circumcision. And so at that point, every man, young and old, had to be circumcised. And every baby boy from that point forward was circumcised. But the non-Jews, this is interesting, the non-Jews, the Gentiles, those that were outside of Israel, this covenant promise wasn't for them. It just wasn't for them. It wasn't a practice that they had to step into. God didn't instruct them to do that, and so they didn't do it. But here's what happens from Abraham to Ephesians. From Abraham to Ephesians, circumcision goes from being an outward sign of promise and hope to a word that's been used for racial hate. That's what's going on here in Ephesians chapter 2. The word uncircumcision was the harshest word of bigotry at that time. And it's written right here in our Bible. In Ephesians chapter 2, to say that the Apostle Paul is dropping the mic, cashing it all in, who knows what happens next, but I need to speak out against it, would be an understatement. Because that's exactly what he's doing. And so here's what the Gentile believers had to come to grips with, is that Jesus might have saved them from their sins, but they didn't stand a chance with God's people. Jesus might have saved me from my sins, but I don't stand a chance with his people. And maybe you're even here this morning and you're like, I've been burned so many times that I just come in here with all my fences. And I know that Jesus saved me from my sin, but I have pushed as many people away as possible. Well, the Apostle Paul has a message for Gentile believers and one for you too. With boldness and conviction, he writes verse 13. Listen to it again. But now, in Christ Jesus, you who were once far away, Gentiles, have now been brought near through the blood of Christ. And here's why verse 13 is so important. Because if the fence between the Jews and the Gentiles, which is one of the biggest fences in all of history, if the fence between the Jews and the Gentiles can be moved by Jesus, your fence can be moved too. Isn't that right? That is so true. And so, check this out, beginning in verse 14. It says, for he himself, that's Jesus, he himself is our peace. There's so much packed into that small phrase. Let's unpack it a little bit. That whatever or whoever is stirring you up. You know, maybe as we talk about fences, as we talk about difficult people in our life, as we talk about people who have hurt us, we have these names and faces on our minds, right? We have these situations that maybe are stirring us up. So question, will more stress or anger or worry or fear solve your problem? No, that's actually maybe what got you to this point. But here's what verse 14 is saying, is that peace, there is power in it. And peace has a name, and his name is Jesus Christ. And so many of you, as you go from worry to stress to anger to fear, and you're just bouncing around with whoever or whatever is stirring that up inside of you. Question, have you tried the peace of Jesus? Because here's what you really need. You need the peace of Jesus to kick down the door. And you need the circumstances of your life to begin taking commands of Jesus. That's where peace is found, and it's only found in Jesus. But here's something I've learned about peace. This is so true. That when I lack peace, it is not because God is powerless. It's always because I am prayerless. It is not because God is powerless, that he can't do it, that he won't do it. It is always because I am prayerless. Guaranteed, lack of prayer equals lack of peace. Every time. And so in your situation, are you hoping for peace? Or are you really asking God for it? There's so much power in peace. I have prayed for peace through cancer and criticism. I have prayed for peace through hurricanes and heartbreak, through miscarriages and money, through parenting and problems. It's a prayer that I've prayed hundreds of times, and here's what I found after hundreds of times of praying it, is that God never fails to deliver peace. He never fails to deliver peace, ever. And here's the deal. This is so interesting, I've learned this too, is that God actually doesn't start by solving my problem. I really wish he would. But he doesn't start with that. He doesn't start by fixing the difficult people in my life. Man, that's really what I was going for, right? But here's where he starts. He always starts in my heart. You want to ask God for peace, he's going to move into every chamber of your heart. And every time that I have to ask God, and sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm asking God over and over and over again, God, fill me with your peace. God, fill me with your peace. God, fill me with your peace. I'm asking over and over, not because God can't do it, but because God is breaking through more and more flesh in my life to convince me that he is true and he is faithful and that peace is found in him. It's true. It's true. And so are you asking God for peace? Back to Ephesians chapter 2, verse 14. For he himself, Jesus, is our peace, who has made the two groups, that's Jews and Gentiles, one, and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall, the fence, if you will, of hostility, by setting aside in his flesh the law with its commands and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace, and in one body to reconcile both of them to God through the cross, by which he put to death their hostility. He came and preached peace to you who were far away, Gentiles, and peace to those who were near, the Jews. For through him we both now have access to the Father by one Spirit. Imagine with me, Gentile believers reading this for the very first time. They're reading this, and the Apostle Paul is writing to them, and he's saying, the barrier's been destroyed. Jesus has given you peace. The hostility is gone forever. I think the Gentiles are like, have you told the Jews that? Have you told them that? Because the looks that we're getting, the way they treat us, all these things, I don't think that's true, but that's not what the Apostle Paul was getting after at all. He's saying, Gentile believers, I'm trying to remind you about what is true by God's standard. That no matter how you're treated, no matter how you're looked at, no matter how you're spoken against, this is true for some of you too, that what's true about God is true, period. And so what's true about God is true, and so what's true about God and how he sees you is true, no matter what anyone else says. And so the Gentile believers needed to hear that. And I love this, is that when the cross slams up against our lives, it can break our addictions and it can break our sin. It can break our doubt. And Paul takes it even further to say, you know what? The cross is even going to take out your prejudice, Jewish believers. It's even going to take out your racism, because that's what the cross can do. That's what the cross can do. So when all the fences between us are destroyed and put to death, you realize and begin to experience that you are blessed to belong. But also discover this, truth number 2, you were built to belong. You were built to belong. You were created for community. The Bible reminds us of this over and over again, but let me take this a different way. This is crazy. So the Harvard Medical School. So anytime someone drops the name Harvard, it's like, listen up, these people are smart, right? So sometimes when you hear like movie reviews and they're like, Joey from Saskatchewan says, best movie ever. You're like, I don't know if I can believe that, Joey from Saskatchewan. But this is Harvard, people, okay? So listen up. And I don't know where they are with Jesus, but check out what they found. Harvard Medical School recently came out with a study to prove that when you are connected in community and have strong relationships in your life, you are not only happier, but you have fewer health problems and you have a greater likelihood of living a longer life. Wow. Happy, healthy, longer life. Isn't that the jackpot that really everyone is searching for? And where do you find it? You find it in community. In community and in strong relationships with other people. They found that the trickle-down effect of belonging to others and having strong relationships in your life, it lowers your stress, which in turn keeps your arteries clear. It improves your gut function. It regulates your insulin. It lowers your risk for dementia and ultimately lowers your risk of a premature death by 50%. Are you kidding me? Where do you find it? In community with other people. It sounds like Harvard is catching on to what heaven already knows. You were built to belong. You were built to belong. That when God put you together, he purposefully designed that you would lean into others. And here was the best part of the research. You're going to have to hang with me on this. They discovered that people with bad health habits, but great relationships, significantly outlive people with great health habits, but in isolation. One more time. Bad health habits and great relationships outlived great health habits, but in isolation, proving once and for all that it's better to eat ice cream with friends than broccoli alone. Yes. I love research like that. Somebody's ready to give their life to Jesus. Let's just do it right now. So awesome. So awesome. This is what Harvard is finding out. And you weren't just set aside to belong anywhere. You were set aside to belong in the family of God. In the Bible, God creates many things in the beginning. The sun, the stars, the moon, animals, and plants. And each time that he makes something, he's like, this is good. This is awesome. This is perfect. But there comes a time after he creates Adam that he discovers that something wasn't so awesome. Do you remember what it was? Adam was all alone. Adam was all alone. And some people could ask, was Adam really alone? Was he really alone? I mean, he had God, didn't he? Didn't he? And this is fascinating. For anyone that thinks that being a Christian is just about you and God and no one else, being alone wasn't God's plan for Adam. Being alone wasn't God's plan for Adam. That he created Eve and he propelled him toward community to say, man, this is what you need in your life. It's not just me and you and no one else. It's others too. You are built to belong. And don't forget that Adam had all the animals, right? Someone could say, Adam wasn't alone. He had all these animals to take care of and to be around. And some people would be like, man, there were probably days that Adam couldn't escape the animals. But that wasn't the community that God had in mind for Adam either. And maybe you're here this morning and you think to yourself, I'm not alone. I've got friends. But your friends act more like vultures and scorpions and baboons than they do anything else. Listen, God created you for a community that was so much better than that. So much better than that. And you can find that in the family of God. You were built to belong. What could this look like? Romans chapter 12 describes us like a family, or God's family like a body. It says, just as our bodies have many parts, each part, that's you, has a special function. And so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, and we all what? Belong to each other. We all belong to each other. Ephesians chapter 2 uses a different picture, not of a body, but of a building. This is cool. Consequently, it says, you are no longer foreigners and strangers, but fellow citizens with God's people and also members of his household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself as the chief cornerstone. In him, the whole building is joined together and rises to become a holy temple in the Lord. And in him, you too are being built together to become a dwelling in which God lives by his Spirit. You were not made for fences. You were built and joined and put together to display Jesus to the world. Church, you were made for this. You were made for this. And don't miss this. We have a chief cornerstone, and his name is Jesus. What was the chief cornerstone? The chief cornerstone was a stone that was placed in the bottom corner of a building. And the foundation, it helped connect the foundation to the walls. And that chief cornerstone also helped connect walls to walls, that if you were to pull out the chief cornerstone, the whole building would fall. And in this illustration, you are the materials that make up the wall. Peter would even say, you are a living stone, a building that's being built by God. And so we are joined together by Jesus. So cool, so cool. This is what you were designed for. You were built to belong. I have some pictures that I want to share with you. Last weekend, we had the opportunity to baptize 30 people over 3 services. It was awesome. It was so, so cool. We love baptisms. We love throwing a party for new life, fresh starts in Jesus. But ask yourself, both last week and even this morning, why did you cheer? Why did you cheer? I know, like, we tell you to cheer, but I've been in churches where clapping has been outlawed for like hundreds of years, right? In churches, and even when they experience baptism, they're like, something is happening to my hands. I don't know what's about to happen. I'm about to make a noise, because they're so excited. And they're not only celebrating what God is doing in someone's life, but they're cheering that person on. That with every clap, it's like, way to go. We're proud of you. God's got this. Sounds like family to me. Sounds like family to me. But the party doesn't stop there. We keep things very simple here at Lakeland. That the pathways from this to that and other things are just very, very clear. If the party doesn't stop there, the party continues in a small group. The party continues on a serve team where true belonging and deeper belonging actually takes place. And if you haven't stepped into that, we invite you to do that. If you're looking for a church to quickly slip in and slip out without ever getting involved or anyone ever knowing you, you've come to the wrong church. Partly because our people are too nice. They won't leave you alone. It's crazy. It's awesome. They love you. They love people. And so whether it's your first week or you've been here many years, you have a choice to make. Is it going to be fences or family? Fences or family? You are built to belong. Your next step would be to stop by Next Step, to sign up for a group or to start serving, or both. And those of you that are plugged into a small group or a serve team, I challenge you to extend that belonging to others. It's key because we were made for it. We're going to end with communion. I'm going to invite the worship team out. And I came across this story that is just so great, I just have to share it with you. American GIs lost a friend in World War II in France. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to figure out what to do with his body, what to do with this friend's body. So they came across this cemetery in France, and they said to themselves, wow, this would be perfect. This would be perfect. We'll just bury him right here. It'll be great. And so they came across the keeper of the grounds, and they kind of explained, hey, we lost our friend, and we'd like to bury him here, and all of that. And in real broken English, after a few questions, was he a citizen here? Was he all of these things? No, he wasn't any of those things. And so the keeper said, he can't be buried here. And so the guys moved on, discouraged, like, what are we going to do? And then one of the guys came up with a great idea. He said, well, if we can't bury him in the cemetery, we'll bury him just outside of the cemetery. And that's just going to have to be good enough. And so later that night, it was real dark. They came back and they dug a hole and they put their friend in their hole and they said some prayers and right outside of the fence. And they said, well, this will have to be good. But before they were on to their next mission the next morning, they came back just to pay their last respects. And they showed up at the place that they thought they buried their friend, and they couldn't find the grave. And they're like, well, it was kind of dark. Maybe we buried him over there. And so what they did is they kind of split up and they went all around the perimeter of the fence to try to find this grave that they had dug where they had put their friend, and they couldn't find it. And so they ran into the keeper of the grounds and they said, hey, we came back late last night and you didn't really say we could do this, but we kind of buried him right outside of the fence. We wanted to honor you and your wishes and all of that. And he said, yeah, I know. In the middle of the night, I woke up and I saw you guys out there digging the grave. And I felt so bad for you. I felt so bad for your friend that after you guys were gone, I went out there and I moved the fence so that your friend could be inside. Isn't that what God did for you? That when we were separated from him, when we were dead in our sin, when we didn't belong, when we didn't have access, all of those things, through Jesus Christ, he moved the fence for you to say you have a family in the family of God, that you belong here. I'm going to move the fence. And for so many of you that are experiencing fences in your life, either personally or with others, if you want to be a follower of Jesus Christ, let me tell you what Jesus did. He moved the fence. And so, follower of Jesus Christ, move the fence. Move the fence in your own life and in the lives of others. Jesus sat around with his disciples towards the final hours of his life. And he held up a loaf of bread. And he said, guys, this is my body broken for you. I want you to take this and eat it. Do this in remembrance of me. He grabbed the cup. And he said, this cup represents the blood spilled for you, for the forgiveness of your sins. Whenever you drink it, remember me. Remember me. And as God's family today, we're still encouraged to remember Jesus and what he did, because he moved the fence for us when we didn't deserve it. When we didn't deserve it. You are a part of the family of God if you've given your life to Jesus Christ. Take your place in the family. Take your place in the family. If you're not a follower of Jesus Christ, I got some bad news and some good news. You don't have access. You haven't been forgiven yet, but you can be. Jesus moved the fence for you. And today, right where you are, you can give your life to Christ and be new and have a fresh start in him. It's available to you. He did it for you too. Here at Lakeland, we practice an open communion, that if you've given your life to Jesus Christ, we invite you to take communion with us, even if it's your first week here. We invite you to do that. All around the room, we have communion tables. You can kind of spot maybe where the closest table is. And the worship band is going to play. And we just invite you to go back there and grab the elements. You can either take it right there or come back to your seat and take it when you're ready. But this is a powerful reminder of spiritual family. As you go to the communion table, as you come back, we're family. This is what families do. This is what God's family does. What a powerful reminder of who we are together. But don't miss out on some of the best opportunities right here at Lakeland for you to belong. Let me say a prayer for us. Jesus, we thank you for moving the fence for us. We didn't deserve it, but you love us, and you gave it to us. And so, Jesus, today we remember. That's what you asked us to do through communion. We remember you. And not only do we remember you, we want to live for you, Jesus. And so whatever that means for every person in every seat in this room, every person who's joining us online, what does it mean to live for you right now, Jesus? I want to obey you. And by faith, we'll step into that. With courage, we'll step into that. Why? because he loves us. And he showed us that on the cross. So Jesus, we remember you. Be in this room. Thank you for giving us a spiritual family. Don't let us miss out on it. It's in your name we pray. Amen.